Bradley Beal was supposed to be the final piece of the puzzle for the Phoenix Suns. When the Suns pulled off the blockbuster trade to bring him to the Valley, it sent shockwaves through the NBA. Fans were ecstatic. Analysts hailed it as a championship-winning move. The message was clear. Phoenix had just assembled one of the deadliest offensive trios in the league. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal. On paper, it looked perfect. Two generational scorers in KD and Book paired with Beal. A proven shot creator who could stretch the floor, lighten the scoring load, and punish defenses from anywhere. The Suns went all in. They sacrificed depth, draft capital, and long-term flexibility, all in the name of chasing a ring. But then the season started, and everything unraveled. Bradley Beal didn't just fall short of expectations, he barely looked like the player Phoenix thought they were getting. Lingering injuries, inconsistent performances, a clunky fit in the rotation. Whether it was bad luck or a failure to adapt, Beal never looked like the third star this team needed. What was supposed to be Phoenix's greatest strength quickly became one of their biggest weaknesses. Instead of being the game changer who would push the Suns over the top, Bradley Beal turned into one of the most disappointing storylines of the season. Coming from Washington, Beal brought with him a reputation as one of the NBA's most polished scorers, a true franchise centerpiece. For years, he had carried the Wizards on his back, capable of dropping 30 on any given night, creating shots from anywhere, and torching defenses with a deadly combination of smooth shooting and offensive craft. So when the Suns traded for him, it felt like a no-brainer. They sent Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, multiple second-round picks, and a pick swap to Washington. On the surface, it looked like a steal. Phoenix was getting a three-time All-Star in his prime, while parting ways with an aging CP3, an inconsistent shooter, and a handful of future picks. It looked like an upgrade, a clear win, but the reality hit hard and fast. Losing Chris Paul hurt more than anyone expected. Despite his age and fading speed, CP3 was still the heartbeat of the Suns, their floor general, leader, and late-game decision-maker. His elite basketball IQ, control over tempo, and ability to orchestrate the offense were irreplaceable. And without him, the offense often looked lost. Beal, who was expected to help fill that void, just wasn't built for that role. He's a scorer, not a facilitator. And when forced to be the primary playmaker, the team's rhythm collapsed. The offense looked disjointed, disorganized, and in key moments it showed. Landry Shamet was never a star, but he was solid. A dependable role player who could knock down threes and give quality minutes off the bench. And in a league where depth can make or break a playoff run, letting go of a player like Shamet hurt more than it seemed at first. Especially with Beal constantly sidelined, the Suns were left scrambling for bench scoring. Then there's the draft capital. Second-round picks and swaps might not make headlines, but for a team as financially strapped as Phoenix, every asset matters. With their salary cap tied up in 3 max contracts, draft picks were one of the only ways to add young, affordable talent, but they gave up those chances for a player who hasn't lived up to the billing. When the Suns made the deal, the vision was simple. Beal would thrive as the third option. No longer the go-to guy, just a high-level scorer who could ease the burden on Durant and Booker. Someone who could space the floor, close games, and punish defenses that tried to double the other two. On paper, it was the perfect fit. But in reality, it was anything but. Before Beal even had time to settle into the Suns system, injuries hit hard. He missed huge chunks of the season with recurring issues, and just when it seemed like he was finally finding his groove, another setback would derail his momentum. Without any consistent time on the floor, he couldn't build chemistry with Durant or Booker, and fans slowly began to realize this wasn't the player they were promised. And when Beal did play, things didn't get much better. His performances were wildly inconsistent. Sure, there were glimpses of his old self, the smooth jumper, the crafty drives, but they were rare. There were no dominant stretches, no takeover moments, no proof that he could change the game. Worse, he lacked the edge, the sharpness, the aggression that made him a star in Washington. Instead of elevating the Suns' offense, he often looked like a bystander, a non-factor standing in the corner. And at the end of the day, his presence didn't move the needle. For a guy brought in to be a difference maker, his impact on winning was next to nothing. What made this entire situation even worse was Bradley Beal's contract. The Suns are paying him nearly $50 million a year. That's superstar money, the kind of contract reserved for franchise leaders, players who dominate in crunch time, elevate their teammates, and consistently deliver all-star level performances. But Beal, he gave them none of that. In the 2023-24 regular season, Beal appeared in just 53 games, missing over a quarter of the season due to lingering back and ankle injuries. And when he did play, his production didn't even come close to matching his paycheck. He averaged just 18.2 points per game, his lowest scoring output since 2016. A far cry from the 30-point-per-game dynamo he once was in Washington. His three-point percentage sat at 43.1%, which might look efficient on paper, but his volume had dropped dramatically. He wasn't creating his own looks, he wasn't attacking the basket, and he certainly wasn't commanding attention like a max contract player should. And it didn't stop there. Beal averaged just 4.4 assists and 4.0 rebounds per game, modest numbers that would be fine for a sixth man. But this was Phoenix's supposed third star, a player who was expected to be the offensive engine when Durant or Booker were off the floor. Even worse, the Suns' win-loss record barely changed when Beal was in the lineup. His presence didn't translate to victories, and for a player being paid like the face of the franchise, that's the ultimate red flag. Max contract players are held to a different standard. They're expected to lead, inspire, and deliver, especially when the pressure is on. But Beal failed to check every single box. He wasn't aggressive, he wasn't dependable, he wasn't a leader. And then came the breaking point. In a must-win game against the Boston Celtics, with the Suns clinging to 11th place in the Western Conference and fighting for their playoff lives, Beal disappeared. He played 30 minutes and scored just 1 point. That 1 point didn't even come from the field, it came from the free throw line. He shot 0 for 7, looked disengaged, and showed zero urgency. For a $50 million player in a season-defining game, that kind of performance isn't just disappointing, it's inexcusable.
Spent 4 days in Phoenix last week. I don't really blame Bradley Beal and his family for.
And it wasn't a one-time thing. In another critical matchup against the Golden State Warriors, Beal finished with just 7 points. But it wasn't just the numbers, it was the attitude. Cameras caught him cheering for Steph Curry after a made three, like a fan on the sidelines, not a man fighting for his team's postseason hopes. That moment told the whole story. Because this wasn't just about stats, it was about mindset, effort, leadership. Beal only had one 30-point game all season, and it came against the struggling Toronto Raptors, a bottom-tier team. For someone once considered one of the league's elite scorers, that stat alone is a damning indictment. Bradley Beal didn't just fall short of expectations. He failed the stat test, he failed the effort test, he failed the leadership test. Phoenix didn't need another body on the court, they needed a fighter. What they got was a spectator. When you step back and look at the full picture, the Bradley Beal situation only looks worse for the Phoenix Suns. Over the past 2 seasons, Beal has missed 74 games due to injury, a staggering number for someone being paid like a franchise cornerstone. And in the NBA, availability isn't optional, it's everything. Even when he was healthy, the production didn't come close to elite. In his final 11 games of the 2024-25 season, Beal averaged a disappointing 12.8 points per game.
Here's Bradley Beal. Beal playing his 48th game this season, short from the baseline in a trade about a month ago. And there he is again, getting the offensive rebound and a foul on Doncic.
Numbers that wouldn't cut it for a mid-level starter, let alone a max contract superstar. And the financial picture? It's about to get uglier. In the 2025-26 season, Beal is set to earn $53.7 million, making him the 10th highest paid player in the league. In 2026-27, that jumps to $57.2 million, ranking 8th league-wide. And even right now, Beal is the 4th highest paid player in the NBA, despite delivering nothing close to a top-tier impact. But this goes beyond injuries or inflated salaries. Since 2017, Bradley Beal hasn't had a single defining playoff moment. No iconic series, no clutch game winners. Nothing to show for years of being labeled a star. And to make matters worse, his contract includes one of the rarest clauses in NBA history, a no-trade clause.
The rookie Carter on his hip, slips a pass into the corner. He takes a pocket pass on the drive and kick. O'Neal, Beal.
Only 10 players have ever had that kind of power. Names like Kobe, Dirk, LeBron. Beal simply doesn't belong on that list. Meanwhile, in the 50 games he played this season, the Suns went 21-29, a losing record. When Beal suited up, Phoenix was actually worse. For someone expected to move the needle, that's a brutal stat. And now, the ripple effects are real. Rumors are swirling that Kevin Durant, arguably the most valuable piece of this core, is looking toward the exit. If the Beal gamble ultimately pushes KD out of Phoenix, this trade won't just be a misstep, it'll be a franchise-altering disaster. Because this isn't just a failed experiment, this could set the Suns back years. While Bradley Beal spent most of the season either injured or underperforming, the burden fell entirely on Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Game after game, they were forced to carry the offense, manage late-game execution, and hide the team's glaring flaws. But this was never the plan. Phoenix didn't trade for Beal to add pressure to their stars. They brought him in to relieve it, to form an unstoppable trio that would stretch defenses and keep opposing coaches up at night. Instead, Beal's absence and inconsistency left the Suns right back where they started. Top-heavy, over-reliant on two players, and one injury away from collapse. And the sting only deepens when you remember the price they paid. To absorb Beal's contract, the Suns gutted their roster. Role players were sent packing, draft picks were tossed in. And with nearly all their money tied up in 3 players, the front office had to patch the rest of the team together with minimum deals and short-term bets.
First off, embarrassing season, right? Disappointed, awful. I watch every game like all of you guys do. No one's proud of it. No one's happy with it.
The result? A fragile, unbalanced roster that simply couldn't hang with deeper, more versatile playoff contenders. When Beal was out, there was no plan B. When Beal was in, but ineffective, Phoenix became a two-man show. Beal's lack of impact didn't just expose his own limitations, it exposed the team's poor construction. The Suns went all in on star power and paid the price. Instead of building a complete, reliable roster, they chased a name. And that name didn't deliver. It's the classic super team trap. The NBA has shown time and time again. Championships are won with depth, chemistry, and consistency, not just talent on paper. And Beal's season proved that more than ever. Instead, he lowered the floor. His contract tied their hands, his injuries disrupted their rhythm, and his presence, or lack thereof, derailed what could have been a title-contending season. In the end, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Bradley Beal didn't move the needle for the Phoenix Suns. The front office, the fans, and even his own teammates expected him to be the final piece in a championship puzzle. A dynamic third star who could take over games, ease the offensive load, and show up when the lights were brightest. But what they got instead was a player who was often injured, frequently invisible, and consistently underwhelming when it mattered most. On paper, he looked like a dream addition. A proven scorer, a smooth shooter, a former franchise centerpiece. But the version that showed up in Phoenix wasn't even close. Whether it was the injuries, a steep decline, or a poor system fit, Beal's Suns' tenure has been defined more by missed opportunities than meaningful contributions. He wasn't a closer, he wasn't a playmaker, he wasn't a difference maker. And for a player commanding nearly $50 million a year, that's not just disappointing, that's devastating. There were stretches this season where his presence, or absence, made no visible difference in the team's performance. And when a max contract player has that little impact on winning, it's a damning indictment. Worse still, the Suns are now trapped. Beal's contract isn't just massive, it's arguably one of the worst in the NBA. His no-trade clause gives him total control, and his ballooning salary eats away at the team's ability to build depth, retain talent, or pivot in any meaningful way. He didn't just underperform on the court, he crippled Phoenix's flexibility off it. The franchise went all in on Beal, expecting a title run. Instead, they're left with a thin roster, a fading star, and a shrinking championship window. Every dollar spent on Beal is a dollar not spent on fixing the team's glaring holes. And now, with Durant aging and Booker carrying too much of the load, the time to win is rapidly disappearing. This wasn't just a bad season from an injured player. This was a franchise-altering miscalculation, a gamble that backfired spectacularly. What was sold as the beginning of a super team era has become a warning sign of everything that can go wrong when you chase names over fit, chemistry, and consistency. Bradley Beal was supposed to be the answer. Instead, he's the biggest question mark in the Suns' future.